Welcome to Season 2 of Mary for the Ages podcast. I'm your host, Mary, and this season is all about how the supernatural and the practical go hand in hand. Spirituality and physicality are not separate, they go together, and living rooted and grounded in your body makes way for incredible spiritual mountaintops. Our guest will be talking about how God met them at the intersection of faith and practicality. Enjoy the show! I'm here with my friend TJ Loeffler. Did I say it correctly?
Close. I mean, for as long as you've known me, it's funny. I don't think you've ever really had to pronounce my last name.
No. Is it Loeffler?
Yeah, it's Loeffler, but nobody really knows that.
I've known you for 5 years now? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm here with my friend TJ Loeffler, who I've known for 5 years now and still cannot pronounce his name. So, there's hope for all of us. TJ is a life coach. He's a former Wall Street guy, former finance guy that had a powerful encounter with Jesus and really started asking big questions about life and purpose. He now works with influencers and founders, and he works with people that are in need of support and help as they learn how to have more purpose and impact in their lives. TJ lives in California with his wife, Savannah, who is the unseen powerhouse, and also with his 2 twin girls, because now he is a twin dad. TJ, do you remember the day we met?
I don't remember the exact day we met, but I remember a couple of our first phone calls.
Yeah, that was an interesting time in my life. I think I connected with you. You were running some kind of referral program, and a friend referred me to you, and we talked, and I was like, I eat organic. I just went to seminary. I don't need this guy. I'm good. Was sort of literally the thoughts that ran through my head. And by November, the year was 2020. By November, I am sitting, ironically, in a coach's house on a retreat, and I'm literally thinking, it can't go on like this. So I text TJ, because I feel in my spirit, I was like, I just need to text TJ. I don't know why. We talked once. It was okay. I'm just being honest. And, I texted you, and I was like, hey, I think I need help with my mindset. And so we talked a couple days later, and we were talking about mindset, and then I was like, and by the way, I'm throwing up every day. I have acne from my chin to my jaw. Nothing is right. And you were just like, wait. Let's back up here. So, yeah, I worked with TJ, and I'm so grateful for both what him and Savannah do to really, build people and help people get healthy. So, anyway, I've really, really been grateful. So TJ, before we jump into all the things, what is a common way that you personally feel like you hear from God?
Great question. I have so many things I could share about what you just mentioned, but
Oh, go ahead. Go back to what I just mentioned. You looks like you didn't have anything to say.
I could go down a long trail there, but I would just add to anybody who, when I have conversations with people, and I know this very well because I've been on this journey myself, but I've been doing private coaching for almost a decade now. And when I have initial conversations with people, it's funny, when I started my coaching journey, I used to think, wow, I've got to have all the answers. And what I found is it's actually less about that, and it's more about, is somebody ready for change? Because if they're ready for change, then the conversation goes much differently. And I actually don't need to have all the answers. I've learned that through my relationship with the Lord, my personal journey, but also working with people and seeing, wow, actually a lot of things that people need to have resolved in their life. And I work with people, some who are really stuck, and it's, about identity and purpose. And now it's evolved, and it's in entrepreneurship and helping them in business and growth professionally. But in all things, it does come back to your mindset and where you are in the process of renewing your mind. And the major question for somebody, whenever you're in that process of being transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12:2, the major question is really just, are you ready and open for change? Maybe I would rephrase that and say, are you open for change? Maybe some people's answer is yes, but are you ready? And some people's answer is no, and that's okay. But timing is such an important ingredient. And one thing, Mary, one thing that I think was very valuable between the time we had our first conversation and the time you texted me, several months, I guess, in between, is the timing piece. And I just want to emphasize like that aspect for anybody in your process of change, the physical aspect of the time that we live in, literally time, wristwatch time, is such an important piece. And, in terms of my way, I'll segue in way that I hear from God and maybe just even how that integrates to what I'm sharing.
Mhm.
I personally did not realize I was hearing from God my whole upbringing. I was adopted through Catholic Charities, raised in a home where Catholicism was kind of the foundation religion, but I didn't understand consciously what a relationship with Jesus looked like. That language was never a part of my journey, and that's okay. I just didn't have that. But I remember praying, being 4 or 5 years, 6 years old, and I remember on my knees praying in bed. Like, nobody, to my knowledge, modeled that for me, not because they were doing the best they can. My parents just didn't have that kind of practice in their relationship with God. But there I was doing that on my own, right? And so in terms of how do you hear from God and encounters you have with God, and I think sometimes people do have like this lightning bolt moment where you go back and you go, whoa, that was a lightning bolt. I've had many lightning bolt type of experiences, no physical lightning bolts, but many of those moments and experiences. But I would say by and large, my relationship with God, I want to use this to encourage people, started with just actually looking back at my life and going, wow, because eternity is on every man's heart, I had a natural desire to seek God ever since I was very little. And that way that I sought God, really, that is what has changed. But my desire to seek him and to have relationship with him, that hasn't changed. Sure, maybe it's gone up in terms of when you experience the presence of God, you experience something really powerful and you go, whoa, I know what that is. I want more of that. And there's been times where, I'm hurt and I want to blame God for it and all these other things, and I distance myself. Those things are a natural part of my journey. But in terms of the way that I hear from God, I think it really started with me seeking him. And I want to encourage anybody that was the first piece in recognition for me. And then the ways that I started to hear from him in my thought life, and really through the process of being transformed in the renewing of my mind, reading my Bible for the first time on my own, and then realizing the Holy Spirit is actually real, and realizing, whoa, these thoughts that are going through my head, they're not just my thoughts. They're not even just God's thoughts. They actually could be from the enemy, and introducing the idea of different perspectives of thought. Those things, that really started to hit me in my 20s when I started getting physically encountered by the Lord. So I'll pause there, but I want to just emphasize for anybody, when you seek God, you find him and build relationship with him and hear from him in the ways that I believe he will present to you as correct for your maturity spiritually. And I think for everybody, though, having some kind of foundation scripturally, some kind, meaning some sound like understanding that there is an order that describes the character of God, is important, as is understanding the spontaneity of the Holy Spirit, scripture and spirit together. So that's how I would tie that up. But there's a lot more I could say about it, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I don't know many people that haven't been crying out to God at some point in their life, but the difference is, do we feel like we've been heard? And is he real? And is he there?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just that hunger to be met that really asks people to ask these questions about, how do we even hear from God to begin with? You shared really beautifully a lot of your own story, and, being adopted out of Catholic Charities, going on an adopted person's journey, all of these things. And so what was that transition over from being in a bed as a child crying out to God to knowing, hearing, and encountering God?
Yeah, many points at time. I'll pull out a few that really stand out to me. One was the experience of death and loss in high school. That was the first real kind of groundbreaking, earth shattering. Why is it sunny outside, but I feel deprived inside? Having a friend die in a car accident. And I realized, wow, this is a real experience of the supernatural, unseen, and the natural. I'm looking outside and everything is going about like nothing has happened. What does this mean? So about 16 at the time, that was a moment where I go, oh wow, okay, so there's a need for something bigger than myself. What happened after death? All these questions come up. Normally, when people start working with me or when, they start seeking God, I'm not putting those in parallel at all, but I'm saying, when you start seeking answers, and sometimes that comes through, I'm seeking God and God provides through people. And so I'm going to seek people, a counselor, a coach, a friend, a mentor, somebody. Normally that happens through loss. Loss is the catalyst. Loss of a dream, loss of money, loss of an idea of the way that things are in life, loss of something in your health. I mean, these are catalysts for change. So something's got to change. So for me, that loss experience was a recognition something has to change in my worldview. I didn't know what that was or have language for it. But then as life went on and I got into college and I realized, well, there are some things that I'm really unsatisfied by in life, whether it was in high school, I had a lot of accolades and really strived and tried to prove my worth. There's a lot I could go into there, but then in college realized I'm kind of not going to be able to find my identity in grades and women and accolades and sports or in all these things. And so I felt pretty empty. And then I did find a really good group of guys that ended up getting around me. Totally a God thing, but long story short is there was a book introduced to me and it's called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And that was I would call a next phase or pivot point in my journey with God, because I remember opening up the book and starting to read and I just started weeping. And I'd never had that experience before. So that to me was a God encounter moment, not because I was crying, but because of what I was experiencing, and the emotions were an expression of that. And so at that point, I realized there was a gaping hole in my heart, which is basically what the book was about, and only God could fill it. And there was a deeper wound there from adoption that I didn't have language for that was starting to be shown to me. Then in my later 20s, I'm now working on Wall Street in New York City, and I'm making money and really kind of straddling the line between I'm seeking God, trying to go to this church thing, do church things, and then living a totally different life completely and going, how do I navigate these two? And I didn't really feel like a super conflict about that. I just thought, well, my career is unfulfilling to me. That was part of it. Actually, the career was great, but it was really me that needed to change, and I needed to go on a healing journey. And so it just kind of was coming to a peak, a mountain top, where you'd then have to go down the other side. But all this time I was walking up the mountain, and right there in New York, I was running in Central Park. I was super conflicted about what to do with my work because it was something a lot of people would really want in their life, but I felt it meant nothing. And I was tired, I was striving, I was exhausted, but I was making money and I had a great path in front of me anyway. I was considering, what do I do and how am I going to live a life with peace and fulfillment and joy? Do I have to just be broke and do nothing and join ministry, or can I find it in doing work? And these were really black and white ways of thinking that are a function of a lot of traumatic experiences that people can have in life, and honestly just unhealthy beliefs. But I was running in Central Park, and I remember just being tired. I said, I'm going to lay down. It was a Sunday afternoon. I took a nap for like 30 minutes, just mid-run. I was like, I'm going to lay down. Woke up, felt the peace of God that just surpasses understanding, complete change of my experience, bodily, physical change. And I was like, wow, I think I need to quit my job. And it made no sense because I had a bonus coming up in 6 months, would have been 6 figures or more, just in bonus. And I had that in front of me, and I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm like, this makes no sense. Well, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. But I had such a peace. It was really profound. Walked in the next day, a lot of things that started to happen where, back to your point about knowing that God knows you, not just crying out to God, but knowing that he hears you. So many different experiences along the way where I was confirming he knows me, and that was truly his voice. And then I left, and that started a whole nother journey of physical encounters. But those different pieces, loss of a friend and death and experiencing that and realizing the supernatural or the unseen's real, then going through college going, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not satisfied, but then having an encounter moment, just reading a book. Then Central Park, peace of God that surpasses understanding, really resolves a problem I could not have resolved just by making a pros and cons list, and having that confirmed through different different experiences the next day. Over the course of time, I've seen many different aspects of my life journey change how I experience God. But that was kind of like the beginning trailhead of how I started the path that I'm on.
I think it's really beautiful, like, because loss is often framed as trust broken. And it's like God showed up and rebuilt your trust
Mm.
in Him again and again and again. And that's just, I'm really moved by that. Just like hearing your story again. I've heard you share your story before, but it just really stands out to me that is who God is. He rebuilds and He builds trust.
Yeah, it's really well said. I mean, I hadn't specifically had language for it in that way, but looking back, I can see many times exactly that, where when there was either trust broken, me thinking, oh, I broke trust with God, but really it was like I lost trust in Him, you know? And when I look back and I see that, and I see the ways that, wow, He still was there. He still was patiently waiting, and that shaping my understanding of who God is and His character. And that really has changed my perspective and my relationship with Him, because I think for a long time, as many do, you have this worldview of God. It's a worldview of God, and He is not of the world. And that is a really challenging thing to get in your mind.
Yeah. And He's the very definition of holy is other.
Exactly.
But then He comes and intersects our timelines. And yeah, that changes everything. It changes everything. So young TJ is wild in New York. Just quit his fancy pants job. He's out here figuring it out. And I know, what was that process and that journey like? And, how did that lead you into what you do now?
Yeah, it was painful. So I left my job thinking, okay, this is a job issue and I'm going to solve it with work. And I realized later, as I lost all my money, my dad got sick and later died, and went through a very traumatic experience watching him pass, and the family challenges that come with that, and then becoming an entrepreneur and not knowing what you're doing and being humbled by that. Then at 27 or so, becoming a life coach, which now I use the term private coach because there's so many aspects to what I do. Just the identity crisis as I'm having a spiritual awakening and a rewiring of my brain. Physical rewiring, that actually is a thing, guys. When you have a renewing of the mind, your brain gets rewired, and the way that you even view memories changes, and that's a part of the rewiring. Memories are proteins that sit in your brain. Anyway, so as I'm going through this healing journey, and as I'm trying to figure out how to make money, and as I'm trying to heal with family, and loss and grief, I thought, well, this is all just a very functional, practical thing. I have to, as I leave my job, I have to find a new job, find a new career path. But really, I was searching for fulfillment, and I was searching for impact, because I thought fulfillment came through impact. And then I was searching for more income because I thought fulfillment came through more income. And it was very messy, because what I realized is the foundation of building the life that you're going to live from started with healing. And I did not have that word in my vocabulary. Healing means that you have something that needs attention, care, time. And I did not have that time in my mind. I I thought, well, I've got to get this right. I gotta make some money. I gotta get on with my life. My gosh. So what do you do when you have nothing but time, because you have an empty calendar, because you don't know what you're doing with your life? You're going through healing, loss, grieving, and you're having a spiritual awakening and trying to navigate how to start and grow a business as a 20-something who doesn't really have security in their identity. Well, you get very frustrated. You end up on a Tuesday afternoon crying on your bed and having God encounter you, and everybody's at work, and you're like, what am I doing with my life? And He's like, I'm just giving you a hug right now. And I had the physical presence of God literally in the room with me, and it was a crazy, I'll never forget it kind of moment, because while I thought I needed all these things, He was saying, actually, I'm just going to sit with you. And I was like, no, I want you to solve all my issues. He's like, let me just sit with you, let me encounter you. And I experienced His presence. Slowly, little by little, I realized, well, the only way that I'm going to be able to help other people is if I can help myself. And That doesn't mean that I can't have grace for those times where I actually just need to cry because I had gone through a very challenging time in my life and was going through a challenging time. But it meant that I still had to try. And so I would try. I hosted events. I ended up putting on seminars, all these things. And Welcome to Yourself was my very first event. And I took it New York, DC, London. And then all these things, the wheels felt like they came off. I realized I'm not an event planner. I'm just the guy who speaks. And I found it incredibly frustrating because I had to do everything for the business. And I was not that guy, but that is entrepreneurship. So I realized that I had to be able to help myself. And no matter what, that was going to start with my health. So what was the journey like? Painful and messy, but it produced what I can see now as one of the greatest gifts that God has given me, which is an understanding of personal responsibility, choice, the power of being able to do things for yourself, even as you're going through hard times, even as God is with you, even as God can do things for you, understanding how to do it with him and not just doing it all on your own, not just letting him do all of it, but recognizing it's a partnership. It's like a process with a friend, a father. There's so many roles and dynamics in that relationship, but I realized I need to do what I can for the day. And so my mindset started to change. That's when I really started to build a life I could live from, a foundation I could live from, which was ask for wisdom, read my Bible to seek wisdom, read books to seek wisdom, not just spiritual books, books from other business people. Actually go out and do the work of helping other people through coaching. Even if I didn't know everything, I learned the power of relative expertise. I might be one step in front of the next person on this same journey, and that's powerful. I can offer something. And really going through the process, I realized it was all about my identity, how I see myself, because that would influence how I would see others, how I would help others, and whether I would do it from a place of insecurity or whether I would do it from a place of security. A big part of changing how I see myself, identity, actually came from working on my health, actually came from starting at that foundation. And that is why I integrate that as the starting point for anybody when I'm working with them, no matter where they are on the journey.
Well, I want to double back to something you said a little bit ago, which is that memories are literally they're proteins in
Proteins.
the brain. So talk to me about, because I think we see our brains and memories and even spirituality as this very like ethereal, not physical, not concrete thing, but you just said that memories are proteins in the brain. What's that about?
Yeah, so I would not claim an expertise in here, but I would say I know enough to share that would be helpful. And I would point somebody to Dr. Caroline Leaf if you haven't seen her resources. But long story short is we're spirit, soul, and body, all three-part beings, right? That's 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Spirit, soul, and body. To understand that is to understand how we function holistically. Okay. And our mind sits in our soul at the soul level. Our brain sits in our body at the body level. And the mind influences the brain. And I believe even the brain influences the mind, right? And there's this thing happening, communication, so to speak. Well, if our brain has a particular memory, call it a protein, based on how we perceived a situation, and our mind has been fed information, let's just say it's been fed a lie about a particular person over time. Here's one for you. The guy on my adoption paperwork, who is my father, according to my adoption paperwork, and my mother, who raised me, was actually not my biological father. And nobody knew that until I was 30. However, I was fed information about the guy on my adoption paperwork since I was a child, about the type of person he is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, based on what information was given. Well, when I turned 30 and ended up meeting my biological father through DNA testing and a whole series of events, I discovered the guy on my adoption paperwork was not my biological father, and then discovered, wow, all these things that were shared with me about my biological father are not true because the guy on the paperwork was not the guy who's actually my biological father. So my memory or protein in my brain changed because I had a new perspective. I now had a new perspective about a
Mhm.
person. And as a result, my proteins in my brain changed. And you can imagine how that changed my mind and how I had to go back and assess what were my preconceived judgments about someone based on the information I've been given. Well, guess what? This isn't just a me story. This is an everyone's story, which is God has a greater perspective than what we have.
Yeah.
And we come up with stories based on what we're given and what agreements we make based on the voices that we listen to, whether they are voices from outside or even just the voice within. Sometimes that's self, sometimes that's God, sometimes that's Satan. And when we're not aware of the difference and we start coming into agreements, we can make a belief about somebody or something that shapes that memory.
Yeah.
From our mind to our brain, it shapes the memory. But what's beautiful is that God gives us the ability to change the shape of that memory, literally the physical protein.
What really comes to mind, I actually did not know this story, but it's like because you thought that was your biological dad, you start having a biological experience that is your dad. Because you believe that that's my dad, and so because of that I have X, Y, and Z genetic inherited traits, and so you're actually having a biological experience on a very deep level because of belief. All of a
Absolutely.
sudden, you're not. Your life is such a beautiful prophetic picture of what it means, I think, to be adopted into the family of God. Because when we start to see God as our Father, I think that should change our genetics.
Powerfully.
I think that should shape, no more of this saying, well, my mom was like this, or, this runs in my family. It's like, well, who is your family? Wow.
One thing that was very powerful for me that I've discovered on this journey as God's been, kind of walking me through it, the whole process of healing from deeper things, is that if you look at it, so I believe there's a strong intentionality is an understated way to say it, design for why the Lord gave Mary Jesus the way that he did. Not through Joseph. There was no earthly biological father. So it's interesting when you look in the Bible and you look at the importance of this father, this son, this father, this son, this father, this son. And it's all funny to me because there was actually no biological father for Jesus. There was no biological father, which means nobody can claim, but everybody can claim
Right.
as an adopted relationship.
Wow.
Everybody can claim. And at the same time, without adoption, nobody can claim
Yep.
connection to that bloodline.
Yep.
Wild to me how he chose to do that and how the spirit of adoption is that literal in the sense that there was no physical father. I understand Joseph was his father, but there was no physical father that created Jesus, the boy. That revelation to me was powerful because I realized, wow, for all of us that have these father issues, mother issues, bloodline, whatever, everyone, to recognize that we are literally all in the same boat and all at the same opportunity is a very powerful thing.
If you have enjoyed this podcast, you will probably enjoy an upcoming course that I am teaching online on healthy living, and it is called Living Whole. This course can be found on my website, maryfortheages.com, MARIfortheages.com, and it is all about the story of how I walked through really significant health crisis in 2020 and came out on the other side rooted, grounded, and much more whole. The course discusses healthy and practical ways that you can build routine and stability into your life, but also addresses the theology of why taking care of our bodies is so important and how it paves the way for a supernatural life. You can find this on maryfortheages.com. To be notified when the course is live, sign up on Substack at Mary for the Ages. Absolutely. Well, and like you said earlier, grief, trauma, and loss are usually the catalyst for making us aware of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For most people.
Yeah, for most people. Yeah, man. Well, you've now kind of walked through this journey of kind of discovering that you're more linked to God as a father than even to your biological father, practically and physically. How has that looked for you? And well, I'm not asking this well, but when did like practicality and spirituality start clicking for you? Because you've kind of mentioned like now I understand that like memories are deeply biological and deeply affect outcomes and perspective on them affects things. But when did that really start to click in for you?
So many things I could share about that, but there's two things that come to mind. One is the confirmation of supernatural in the natural. So what I mean is the unseen in the seen. So I remember there was one time I had a very powerful encounter with the Lord. It was actually in a group of people, with a group of people, and I was receiving prayer. Long story short, the whole thing started with, does somebody have something going on with their eyes? Nobody answered. I was like, I have contacts. I've worn them my whole life, and I'd love to be healed. So can I just raise my hand right now? Next thing you know, I'm on the floor being delivered from 14 generations of generational sin. There's like, I'm screaming, banging my head on the ground because I'm being delivered of rage. All kinds of crazy things are happening.
And you're
This is
like,
all
I
new
just
to me.
wanted my contacts gone, but all
I
this
just
other
wanted to
stuff is
have my
leaving.
eyes healed. But look what God did. He showed up in a different way and showed me some things that I needed to really be healed from. So then after that, I was sweating. Peace of God overcomes me. And I'm like, what just happened? I ate Chick-fil-A and went home. Then I was very hungry. It was a very hungry deliverance freedom moment. Anyway, so then, and by the way, this is all new to me. That's an example of a crazy deliverance moment. But I've had many deliverance moments where it was just a light bulb. It was just a boom, light bulb. Oh my gosh. I'm like, wow, I'm totally, deliverance is going from bondage to freedom. That's it. So for me, that was one experience, very, very intense. But after Chick-fil-A, after going home, and then the next morning, I remember I said, Lord, I don't know what any of that was about. But can you show me? Like scripturally, can you show me? Kid you not, I open up my Bible to this is terrible because I can't remember exactly it'd be more powerful if I could remember exactly the verse right now. This is years ago. I believe it's in Peter, I could be wrong. And it talked about how the blood of your ancestors, how you were healed and delivered from the blood of your ancestors. And that was the first verse I read the morning after I was delivered from 14 generations of generational sin. And I had asked the Lord to show me in scripture. This has been my journey of reading the Bible. Some people are on this, I want to read the Bible in a year, love it, go for it. Some people are on this, you're not a Christian if you open your Bible and read it that way. Sorry, that's how I do it. But I'm not sorry. That's how the Lord spoke to me. And it is so powerful because he showed me in that moment, he said, TJ, the supernatural is very natural. And the things that I did in the unseen realm are very real. And I'm going to show you. And I had security in how he showed me because it was scripture confirming, and I had just asked the question, right? And so the Bible to me is the word. The word is Jesus or Yeshua, and that's the character of God. And he showed me his character, which was, hey, I love you, and guess what? I'm taking care of things, and I know what I'm doing. And that was very empowering and showed me this is very practical. So that's one thing. I had these supernatural, I have many more stories like that, supernatural showing up in the natural. The second thing was the very practical aspect of health. And I thought to myself,
Oh, and that verse for this at home
please
is
go ahead.
1 Peter 1:18 through 19.
I believe that's right. Yes.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
what Google said. Anyway, continue.
No, and I'm like, I didn't want to even go down the road of trying to guess, but I
Yeah,
believe
you're
that's right.
fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so then the second thing now was practicality. Okay, how did this become applicable? Well, I realized I started hanging around a lot of really spiritual people, and I hadn't necessarily most of my life. Not that people I was around weren't spiritual. It just wasn't a part of where I'm from. People I was around, it wasn't a topic of conversation very often. But I always had this interest. I just maybe didn't have the place to go for it or didn't seek out the place to go for it or both. And so, I realized when I was getting in my 20s, I was trying to go to church by myself. I was trying to really pursue God, trying to figure this out. I even got into some like at the beginning stages before I really started reading my Bible. I started getting into some new agey stuff. I was just seeking. Anyway, then started realizing something's off here. But I got conviction in my heart about Jesus, and I was hanging around people who had that same conviction. And I was like, but why are people so unhealthy emotionally, physically? And I was looking at myself going, okay, I'm healthy, right? And I realized in working with clients, I can sit there and talk on the phone with them and help them, or even some in-person sessions. But like, if they physically are not healthy, this only goes so far. And I can't tell you how many counseling sessions people go through or coaching sessions people go through where nobody ever brings that up or talks about it. It's like somebody says, this wouldn't be case for people I'm working with necessarily, more counseling moments, but somebody says, oh, I have depression. And it's like, well, is the counselor asking you the first questions? Do you drink enough water? Because dehydration and depression can have overlapping symptoms. Do you eat? When was the last time you ate? What do you eat? What's your protein intake like? Counselors don't know, or generally just don't ask these questions as a starting point. And if they do, they're doing it out of protocol or something from a system. They're not actual understanding, right? But when I started going through personal change and seeking out help for my health, I started seeing, whoa, my cortisol levels in the morning should be like this, and in the evening should be like this. And they were flipped. And no wonder I'm wired at night and tired in the morning. And this is affecting how I think and my attitude. And maybe it's not just grief, or maybe it's not just I'm going through a lot spiritually. It's actually hormonal imbalance. And I thought to myself, this is powerful. People need to understand this. So I started realizing you got to take care of your health as the lowest hanging fruit for everything else, because
Yeah.
love it if you're spiritual. Love it if you know how to make a difference and you got your identity and purpose and blah, 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 and you can go out in the world. But guess what? If you aren't healthy, how long do you think that's going to last? Not very long.
This is where you found me because I'm over here. I eat off of Whole Foods and I'm, living my best life now and I'm fasting in an unhealthy manner and my spiritual life's on fire and so is everything else. I thought that I had all this amazing capacity and, 2 months later, didn't have that capacity anymore.
What's interesting is it's really applauded to fast, and it's really applauded to be like the person who just pounds fast food because you're on the road for God. It's like, okay, that's great, guys. But how many people are aware of what they're doing? For women in particular, I'm not a woman. I will speak to it because I do have a wife. I do have 2 daughters, and I've worked with several clients, many hundreds of women over the years, and learned the power of understanding that women have 30-day cycles, men have 24-hour cycles, by the way, hormonally. And it is not great for men or women at certain times in their life, not just cyclically, but certain times in their life, to be fasting for prolonged periods of time, especially if there is dysregulated eating, especially if they have hormonal imbalances
Right.
because of lifestyle choices that they didn't even know they were doing. This is not helping somebody. And although there are benefits to fasting, and even the spiritual implications can be so powerful, and they can compensate for some of these biological challenges you might encounter, for sure. At least know what you're doing. That's all I'm saying. At least know what you're putting your body through. Is this a good time for this? Like, most people can't answer that question. Last time somebody did blood work, they probably would say, I got a physical 4 years ago. They don't know even what getting blood work does or what you ought to be looking for, and have not sought out professional help outside of, do I have a major health problem, right? So anyway, I could go on about this. This is not like the primary. It's funny because it's not like I'm not the health coach. I actually even hire out coaches who do health coaching because I just am not that guy. But it's like, look, I can't help somebody get to the level they want to be at, high functioning people who want to go to another level. I can't help you get there if you can't at least take care of your health, because you're going to hit a plateau.
And if your brain is made out of proteins and you don't have any, and your memories are made out of proteins and you're not eating protein, there's literally nothing there for your body or your mind or your soul to rebuild with. And this is something that I'm running into a lot online, is we've got a lot of spiritual people that think that they can disconnect from their body and be more spiritual. And that's frankly what I did 5 years ago, and it landed me in a very unspiritual place. And I think first, second, and third John speak really clearly on this. Like, we have had the same problem from the get-go. People want to deny that Jesus came in the flesh. People want to deny that we have physical bodies that will be physically resurrected, and they want to deny that our physical bodies have meaning and importance to God and that they matter. And more than just our body is a temple sort of way, like molecularly, like physicality is health, it's spiritual health. So,
100%. Yeah, and I mean, for somebody who doesn't, if they, the idea of, I was being spiritual that you mentioned, I was being spiritual by ignoring the physical health of my body. I, in a different sense, was doing that from a work standpoint. I was being productive or whatever you want to call it, lacking attention to my body. Like I could be better at whatever I did in life because I was ignoring my body, whatever, doesn't need it. I don't need it. It just carries around my brain. It's like that is the furthest thing from truth that I could think of from when it comes to the health aspects of your life. And just recognizing that and going, whoa, I got a lot of blind spots here was a big deal for me. And then bringing other people in who could actually help me identify where to start on that health journey. That was a big deal. I'll give you one more, guys, just if you're listening and you're like, okay, how else does this affect? Well, if you have unhealthy, toxic thinking, okay, your God in his brilliance actually gave us by design a way to remove toxic thoughts. It wasn't therapy sessions, it was sleeping. And every night, actually getting good quality sleep does this thing. There's a cycle that washes your brain where it actually, like a car wash, it cleans off the dirt in your brain, so to speak, or washes the toxic proteins. And if you don't have that because you get poor sleep, inconsistent sleep, blah, 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 then you're kind of missing your car washes. And so you end up with a dirty car, or your mind's a little bit dirty and filled with toxic thinking. This is a real thing. And so people are like, I need deliverance from this thing. It's like, yep, you need sleep. You do. And maybe that'll deliver you, set you free from toxic thinking. I'm not kidding. And so I have a very hard time with if somebody is just totally ignoring the health aspect and still seeking. I will not go to the point of saying, hey, you should know better. But I'm saying when you do know,
yeah,
it's a game changer.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really solid, especially people that are like, let's just take the tack of leadership, because people that are in leadership positions a lot of times are getting pulled all the time by other people. And it's like more spiritually to be pulled constantly, but it makes it impossible to set healthy habits and actually have a sleep cycle when that's happening. Anyway, so like if for somebody that's wanting to set some better habits, maybe like what's something simple that they could try?
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not a health coach, but I use health as a foundation whenever I'm working with somebody. And the number one thought change you could have, I've got 7 core pillars that are helping you think about the lowest hanging fruit in your life. And that's diet or nutrition, sleep, movement, active rest, reflection, connection, and fun. Don't need to memorize those, but within movement, which is a catch-all for so many things, thinking about movement as replenishment is a really helpful shift. So let's say you go on runs. Don't run to work out, run to replenish. Let's say you go to the gym. Don't go to the gym to work out, go to the gym to replenish. When I first started training with a guy who I trained with for years, he's my personal trainer, registered dietitian. After our first session, he said, how do you feel? I said, actually energized. I'm not that tired. I feel good. He goes, good. I'm here to make you better, not more tired. And that really started to change the way I thought about movement. It's like, wow, I had a really poor relationship with movement, and I didn't really think about it as needing to be replenishing. And given all of the emotional challenges and spiritual uprooting and physical changes happening in my life, I really was in a time where I needed movement to be replenishing. Sure, sometimes you're going to do hit workouts and it's really tough and you need to work your body and go hard. But those workouts and anything else you do movement wise is only as good as your recovery. So think about replenishment. That's an activity. But then the other thing is I tell people, better mornings start with better evenings. And a lot of people struggle with mornings. I'm not a morning person or whatever you want to call it. But even if you are a morning person and you get up and you struggle with productivity or struggle with getting your day going or just feeling like you're actually accomplishing things, better mornings start with better evenings. So if you can apply those two principles in your life, I think you will really make some significant changes. I give people what's called the 3x3 when we start working together. And this is really just 3 principles in the evening, 3 principles in the morning. Okay, so in the evening, you want to rest, digest, and read. So rest, turn your phone on airplane mode. Digest, stop eating about 2 hours before bed. That's when you turn your phone on airplane mode. And then read 10 minutes before bed. Just put a book by your bed with a lamp next to you, not across the room, because otherwise you will not turn it off. And read and just clear your mind. And if you want to, instead of reading, journal, but really simple. And then when you get up in the morning, the other part of the 3x3, so you got 3 things in the evening, in the morning, 3 W's, water, walk, worship. So drink your water. I suggest lemon water with a touch of salt. You take a half lemon, squeeze it in there, throw some salt in there, and very hydrating, very replenishing, very nourishing to your body, helps you digest and take out the trash before you start jamming your system. Go on a walk, so water, walk. You can even drink your water while you walk. 10 minutes. Sunlight is great if you have it. If you don't, just get movement. And worship. And worship doesn't have to be turn on worship music. It can literally be a simple act of gratitude, because any gratitude is unto what you're truly grateful for, which is the Lord and what he's done for you. So thinking about those 3 things in the morning, game changer. People have told me, man, if I didn't learn anything, doing the 3x3 has really helped me. And that's what people who I've spent 7-8 years coaching with, long-standing relationships. The 3x3 is a very powerful way of applying evening and morning rhythms, I like to say, instead of routines, because routines tend to be pretty rigid. Rhythms are more like a song. You miss a beat, you get back in. So again, in the evening, rest, digest, and read. And in the morning, water, walk, and worship. Very practical 3x3, something you can apply right now.
No, that's really powerful. Well, and I know you're not the health coach or what have you, but I think what's so unique about your coaching and your coaching style is how embedded it is in physicality and practicality. And it's not these ethereal things where it's like, well, if you think better, then, better things are going to start happening to you. And you really kind of dial people back down to, well, why is thinking bad? What's actually going on? And I think that that's just something we've been missing everywhere for a long time.
Yeah, and it's something you kind of look back, you look at it and you go, well, I was definitely missing some of this, right? So then it becomes a very easy thing to talk about, because it's like, I know where people have blind spots here, not just from working with them, but from my own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. What's been like a really rewarding moment of breakthrough or, I know you have testimonies that you can share, but what's been something really rewarding that you've seen kind of on the other side of other people's journeys?
When people come to me, a lot of times it's starting with career, lack of fulfillment, direction, or clarity. Then we peel back the layers and see, normally it might be a little bit deeper. Some people I've mentioned, I've worked with some people for 7-8 years, and we've navigated anything from, high performer, Ivy League school, let go from job, what next, what's going on, then getting a job better than what they had last time, to then getting a better job, to then doubling their 6-figure income, to then not dating for a long time, to then potentially getting to the point of engaged, to health dialed in, life-changing experience, doing personal branding, changing how they actually even dress. I mean, we're talking like crazy transformation happening. And so when I think about what's rewarding is, there's many moments of breakthrough, many moments where somebody has a light bulb experience and their perspective and paradigm changes. And then there's the expression of that over years. And to me, what's so rewarding is seeing through some of these relationships. I mean, I've seen many clients go from, I want to be married, to happily married. I've seen many clients go from, I'm really not well health-wise, to I'm thriving and I understand how to manage myself. I've seen many clients go from, I don't have direction in my career, to, actually, I don't have to leave everything. I just needed a new perspective where I am, and I'm actually more fulfilled at the same place I was. I've seen many people go from, I really don't understand how to navigate relationships and what's going on, to my relationships are actually a lot better. They're healthier. I'm starting to see real change. I'm navigating boundaries and communication, and I'm really leading much better than I used to. And by the way, I have a lot of grace for other people in the process, but not to the point where I'm losing myself. Seeing all of that in the process of people transforming their lives, to me, the most rewarding part is really the expression of those mini breakthrough moments over time.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you stay in touch with people well, and you do relationship really, really well. So I know that that's not always easy to do, but you've done that really well for so many people, and so you get to see it.
And it's hard, it's messy.
Yeah.
It's messy sometimes, because relationships are messy. And I had a client, this just speaks to the power of relationship, but I had a client just send me a message just the other week saying, "Hey, can we just talk quickly?" And I've worked with them for years. I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. What's up?" This is totally, normally our calls are scheduled, so it was just a kind of a random thing, but I knew if they asked, there was something going on. I didn't know what. They were like, "Hey, just real quick, I actually just don't want to keep something to be resentful. Like, I interpreted this one thing as, and I really just want to communicate it because I know that's not intended. And
Yeah.
can I just have that conversation where I can express that?" And I said, 100%. Powerful. So glad you even asked, because to me, that indicates
Mhm.
strength of relationship. When somebody can say, "Hey, this is not who you are. I understand this might be my own stuff, but I still need to express it and say it because I want to continue having a strong relationship." And I thought to myself, wow, that's powerful that they did that. And two, I'm really grateful that they even feel open and comfortable to be able to do that. And it ended up being an amazing conversation. They felt heard. I said, well, this is really insightful for me. In the future, when that topic comes up specifically, what can I do? And they gave me a suggestion. I said, great, that's perfect. Because frankly, and they knew this, I don't have their worldview about this topic. They have a completely different worldview because of their experience in life. So what they were thinking based on my response was completely from their worldview, and it was totally not even in my line of sight because it's not my worldview. So just a great example of how, like, when I think about, wow, what's powerful? I mean, I don't know how many people have experiences like that when they're working with clients, but that was an incredible, I would say, testimony, to the strength of relationships that you can build with people.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's fruit, like having long suffering, being able to have the conversations. That's fruit of process, and
Yeah.
that's fruit of the Lord in your life when you're willing and able and open to have those conversations. That's fruit on both sides. That's really beautiful. It seems like 2025 is a big change year for a lot of people. Any hot tips for those of us who wish to remain peaceful and grounded as the world
Change is
says?
change is consistent. Keep moving.
Yep.
Change
Mm-hmm.
is consistent.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
consistency, learning how to live in consistency,
Mm.
the one element of consistency you can control, that is one of the keys. Change, whether you control it or not, is consistent. And so you have to be flexible. You have to know how to persevere. And the only way I know how to do both of those things is to keep moving. And in order to keep moving, you have to build healthy rhythms to some degree to give yourself the best chance. To give yourself the best chance to keep moving, you have to surround yourself in your inner circle, surround yourself with empowering voices. You have to consider what you need to change in your ways of thinking, in your daily activity. Literally think about the actions of your day. What activities am I committing to this day? You may not get it right. It may take you 10 months to change something that should only take you 10 days or 10 hours. But guess what? If you keep moving, you're going to figure it out. I really encourage people, if you're going through change, experiencing challenge, look, as you grow in responsibility, that is not getting lighter or easier. Learn how to deal with it now and you get better.
That's really, really good. Change is a constant. Yeah, that's really good. Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
I think something that would be helpful
Mm,
is just remembering, whoever's listening, that we're all on a journey. Just because you hear somebody speak about their experience and lessons learned from the journey,
yeah.
that does not mean that they have overcome everything. And that challenge for me is daily.
Yeah.
And I think I used to kind of not position myself, but even in my mind, I share that more for me than anybody else, probably. In my mind, I think I used to think, I've really navigated a lot. I've gone through a lot in my life. I can share about some things. And I think now I'm like, no, I am going through things. I am challenged daily. I
Yeah.
have my own journey. And it's a privilege that I can even have a voice and a place like this to even, so thank you for hosting, but like it's a privilege I can even just share anything from that. And I'll do it on the street. I'll do it here. I'll do it on the phone, coaching. I'll do it with my daughters one day, Lord willing. But that is a gift that we have, is our experiences. How we use that, how we share that. Some people like the word steward that. That's really where our choice is. And you're going to have challenges. That doesn't mean that you can't share something. So I would just encourage anybody listening, I guess, share something, when you see the opportunity to gift somebody the gift of your experiences. Don't leave it to other people. Don't just consume, create, go out and offer something, even if it's not on the internet. Share your joy, share your encouragement gift, share whatever it is that you have. And I think you'll find a lot of fulfillment.
Yeah. That's really good, TJ. That's really good. Thank you so much just for taking the time to jump on and share today. I know it's always a treat to get to talk with you and catch up. If people wanted to find you, how would they on the internet, not just down in California on the street, people out there roaming around looking for TJ. If they wanted to find you on the internet, how would they do that?
Yeah, TJ Loeffler, anywhere, not anywhere, but most places you can find me. So TJLoeffler.com on Instagram, on LinkedIn, etc.
Yeah.
For a long time, in the last few years, I've entertained the idea of just taking all that stuff down and saying, just email me. But it's not like I have, I'm not this super famous guy, but I kind of like the idea of, hey, just send me an email. But you can send me an email, tj@tjloeffler.com. That's a great way too, but I'm approachable.
I think it's anybody born before Y2K. It's just like, I think we made a turn somewhere and
Just email me, just send me a message.
we miss it when the internet screamed at us when it
Yeah,
dialed up. This is a simpler time.
that was a different time.
But yeah, an email works great. Thank you so much, TJ. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you for joining Mary for the Ages podcast. I am your host, Mary, and you can connect with me on maryfortheages.com, MARI for the ages.com, and that handle will also work at Mary for the Ages on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Substack. To learn about upcoming courses, including my soon-to-be-released course on Living Whole, which is a healthy living course that touches on the practicalities and the theology of getting your life back in order. You can connect with me on any one of those streams. Thank you so much for joining and speaking and wishing blessings over you as you head to your day.